Welcome back to Franco Fridays. I managed to squeeze in a Franco film in the midst of this 100 horror film ordeal in October, and I got a good one for you today. 1988's Faceless. Faceless is a French production. It's kind of a one and done film by a guy named Rene Chocteau, and he is the producer. He produced one film, and that was it. He apparently made his money as a distributor of VHS tapes in the 80s and then went on to DVD after that. He tried his hand at production one time and then that was it. And he picked Franco as the director, and I'm glad he did because this is a great film. Uh, for those of you that are kind of iffy about Franco or prefer the more standard genre films, slasher films, etc. from the 80s, I would encourage you highly to try Faceless because I think Faceless will make you a convert. It is a great film. It was shot in Paris, and all the locations in this. It's amazing how Franco is able to source locations with such a low budget. He found a clinic for the medical scenes, a chateau. I mean, it's just amazing how he's able to squeeze so much uh, budget. I mean, with such a low budget, he's able to squeeze so much production values out of these low budgets. It's fascinating. This film is really a blend of the awful Dr. Orloff story, which we know Franco knows and loves, and the Eyes Without a Face uh, classic from the '60s French film, Eyes Without a Face. It definitely pays heavy tribute to Eyes Without a Face. Storyline wise, this film is chock full of great acting, fantastic acting. Starting with Helmut Berger, who plays a doctor whose sister has been disfigured with acid, and he's attempting to replace her face, essentially. He and his cohort, the kind of the softcore porn star or hardcore porn star, Bridget LaHaye, who was in a number of Franco films. The sexy blonde Bridget LaHaye is in this. They're kind of the two main characters, and Bridget is helping Helmut uh, acquire girls, basically live tissue, if you will, samples from their face, so that they can perform this experiment. Uh, the problem gets into it with the storyline is that uh, Helmut has really lost his skills. He had a surgery go bad, and so he's kind of basically offloading the surgical responsibilities to someone he's more skilled than him, and that's where um, the Orloff character comes in with our buddy Howard Vernon. He's back, and he has a small role as Dr. Orloff. Dr. Orloff and his wife, played by Lena Ramey, she's like eight. She's supposed to be 80 years old, but the makeup doesn't quite sell you on the fact that she's 80 years old. Anyway, they are kind of a go-between. They know a Nazi doctor, a former Nazi, that's played by Anton Diffring. So Anton Diffring is in this. He is skilled with basically face transplants, live tissue face transplants. And so Helmut's idea is let's bring in Anton and let him do the face transplants. That's the storyline. And in the midst of all that, you've got Helmut and Bridget snagging beautiful girls as tissue samples. One of the girls they snag is Carolyn Monroe. And Carolyn Monroe is, well, she doesn't have a whole lot to do in this, but I think she added a lot of production value. She basically gets captured. They were going to use her for a tissue sample, and then she gets raped by one of the henchmen in the clinic, and it screws up her face. So she's kind of out of the picture. But except for the fact that She's got a very well-to-do father, played by Telly Savalas. This thing is packed with talent, from an acting perspective. Um, Telly Savalas hires a private detective, and that private detective is played by Chris Mitchum, who is the son of Robert Mitchum. I mean, this is almost like a Hollywood production with the strength of the acting in this thing. Chris Mitchum, who I think looks more like a young Christopher Walken than he does his dad, is trying to figure out where Barbara, in this case, Carolyn Monroe, disappeared to. And so those are the cross-secting storylines in a very solid story, great script, um, well shot, and if you put this film on not knowing it's a Franco film, I think many people would say would not recognize it's a Franco film. All the things that we normally would we know and love with Franco films are really kind of minimized and played down in this film. For example, a lot of the sex scenes, there are sex scenes in this, but they're aborted at the point where things get really graphic. They look like a normal sex scene of any Hollywood horror movie that you would see from the 80s. You might get a tit shot here or there, but basically it just kind of stops at the point where it gets a little much, including Carolyn Monroe's rape scene, which Franco, usually lavishes a lot of camera attention on those type of scenes. It's stopped. It's tastefully done to the extent you can do this kind of scenes tastefully. The other thing about this film is there is a lot of graphic, brutal kills in this film. A laundry list of films. It really could pass for a slasher film easily. I mean, you could certainly classify it as a subgenre slasher film without any qualms at all. And you've got some great kills in this, mean-spirited kills. Let me run down the list here of what we got here as far as the kills, because there's a lot of them. Um, we got a machete chopping off two arms at once, both arms. A hypodermic needle to the eyeball that looks a lot like something from Fulci film. There's a cheesy decapitation with a chainsaw, which, the special effects on that were bad but entertaining. And then there's a brutal scissors to the neck that, and the thing about it, Franco's not a big fan of gore. He films the shots. You get all of it, and you get the aftermath. I mean, there's no cutting away on this thing. If someone had told me Lucio Fulci directed this, I'd believe it in a heartbeat. Because it's that graphic, it's that mean spirited. The needle of the eyeball, man, that really anytime somebody gets it in the eyeball, it bothers me a lot. And I think this was a great scene. The scissors to the neck. Once the aftermath is done, you've got blood jetting out of the back of the neck where the scissor exited. Man, it's some brutal stuff. You've got an impalement into a wall. You've got a gruesome facelift scene here, which leaves this one woman basically with just a skull. You've got a skull with maggots crawling in it, a la Fulci. Um, it's the film is really a vast 180 degree turn from the Franco normal impressionistic art house type film. This is just a straight up modern day slasher film, and I think it proves without a shadow of a doubt that Franco, the movies Franco makes are because he wants to make them. And then if he wants to do so, if he wants to replicate the Hollywood genre style, the style of the slasher films from the 80s, or any other style, he's quite capable of doing it and doing it extremely effectively. Um, the film was plagued by some production problems, mainly because it's Rene Chocteau's first production, and he was very invasive apparently as far as the production, and on a whim he would terminate technicians and crew members, and then the day of the shoot there'd be a new crew member, and I think that affected the production somewhat, particularly as it relates to special effects. Some of the special effects in here, people are going to say, well, it's just, particularly, let's say the decapitation scene it does look bad. It's cheesy, bad. But as Franco pointed out in the commentary, a lot of that had to do with the fact that the producer demanded that the special effects crew be on location. And when you're on location and you don't have all the things necessary to complete your job, it certainly slows down the production, but you get some hits and misses with regard to special effects. So I think that's what happened here. But having said that, in general, the special effects are fantastic in this. And again, they're very mean-spirited kills. I would argue that scissors to the throat scene would stand up to any modern-day slasher film. Very good stuff. Very entertaining film. The ending, I love the ending of this film. The way this thing ends is fantastic. And I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I almost give this a 10 out of 10. I can't do it because I think there are some real issues with it, but I definitely give it a 9 out of 10. I think it's one of Franco's strongest films he ever made, and I highly recommend it. The Shriek Show, this is a Shriek Show release, which has 2 audio commentaries, one with Franco and Lena Remey, that goes the whole 90 minutes, and then there's another partial commentary with Chris Mitchum. Then there's 3 interviews, which are about 20, 30 minutes apiece, including Franco, Chris Mitchum, Carolyn Monroe. So this is a great release and a fantastic horror film. Highly recommend it. I can't say enough good things about it, and it was just a joy to watch. So that is going to wrap up Franco Fridays, and I appreciate you watching. Thanks.